and giving our staunch support to Ukraine while also meeting our own requirements and those of our allies and partners. But it also means redoubling our common efforts to strengthen Ukraine's military for the long haul.
Let's get more on this now from Mark Kimmitt in Washington, D.C. He's the former Assistant U.S. Secretary of State for Political and Military Affairs. Mark, welcome to this News Hour. Mark, how significant is it that we have just seen 40 defense ministers from around the world all gather to discuss this conflict and come together really in a massive show of support for Ukraine? How often does something like that even happen?
Well, it really hasn't happened in my memory. Certainly we had large coalitions of the willing set up for Iraq, both in the first and the second Gulf War. A large coalition of the willing working under Nato in Afghanistan, but nothing that approximates the size of what we're seeing at that meeting. And I would expect the follow-on contributions from those countries sending a very clear message to Moscow about where the free world stands.
Mark, what do you make of the German commitment that we've just heard Lloyd say that Germany's now committing Cheetah anti-aircraft systems? A bit of a turnaround from Berlin, considering that they weren't as invested at the beginning of this conflict.
Well, I think that Germany was eventually going to come around. As you know, they just had a change in the government, and this new prime minister was probably being a bit circumspect before he dove into this operation. Now that Stolz has his feet underneath him, and he's got a pretty good sense of German popular opinion for this operation, it may be the time in his mind to lean a little bit more forward rather than leaning back as he has been up to this point.
Mark, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, has said that Moscow's in a proxy war with Nato. Do you think that's true?
Well, I think when our Secretary of Defense may have used some language that could be interpreted as that, Sergei Lavrov and President Putin are going to take those perhaps non-judicious words and words that meant something completely different and bend it to their own advantage, particularly as they're trying to convince and build morale inside Russia from a operation that we consider an invasion to one they consider to be a provoked operation. And now when the United States says it's a proxy war or suggests it's a proxy war, giving them more justification for fighting this war.
And this war has been raging now since the 24th of February. Ukraine and its military has really been praised for its fortitude. Many people didn't expect Kiev to even last as long as it has, and even the US describing it as the Battle of Kiev and Ukraine winning. But how much longer can Russian forces continue, given they've apparently lost many soldiers? And does Ukraine's army have the numbers and the firepower, even now with this renewed support, to hold off a Russian offensive?
You know, that's a very good question. I was at a dinner last night with a former Secretary of Defense, and we completely agreed that at this point, Russia has not used its old tactics, which has been so successful in the past, which is mass and large numbers, replacing people with artillery, replacing people by rockets. We have not seen the massive artillery strikes that we've seen in the historical norm. We may see that in the weeks to come. Look, I think that Russia has taken a lot of losses. They've lost more in Ukraine than they lost in 10 years in Afghanistan. But by the historical record of Russia, these are very small numbers indeed. I think that the Ukrainians have done a wonderful job and have really stepped up to the plate in this fight. And the coalition, to include Turkey with their marvelous drone, have been able to stand up to what some would say is the second or third largest military in the world. How long they can continue to do that, I think that at this point, it's an undetermined amount of time because they don't seem like they feel defeated, and neither does Russia. And that's a recipe to keep this war going for quite some time.
Yeah, a bit of a dangerous combination there. Mark Kimmitt, live to us there from the U.S. Capitol. Mark, always appreciate your analysis. Thank you.